And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on the carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, and go round and round and round in the circle game. Thanks to Joni Mitchell for her song, The Circle Game. I won't torture you all by singing the rest of it, but you probably get the general idea. Well, it's Friday, thank God. Poets Day, they call it. Piss off early, tomorrow is Saturday. We all just did that, except not on Friday. Thursday evening, actually. As I recounted in podcast number 59, that after it became blindingly obvious that the timetabling of the landscape days on the 26th to 29th of May wasn't going to work, and the bright, spanking new suggestion from the PAC of reconvening for a week in August, topics to be decided, was discovered also to be unworkable. The day finished with the not unreasonable outcome that FODC and the applicant would challenge the timetabling decisions of 26th to 29th of May in court. As you might imagine, there was not much more to be said after that, and we were all dismissed and told to come back on Monday. I'm guessing the PAC will back down around the timetable, and where will that leave us? And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down, and we're all captives on the carousel of time. To get back to the review of the week, I think most people are carrying a kind of mental tiredness that is hard to explain unless you're sitting in that room all day, listening carefully, trying to absorb huge amounts of technical information while also hearing deeply personal testimony from people whose lives are tied to this landscape. The week began with discussions around the proposed closure bond and Section 76 agreement. The figure being discussed was just over £20 million, and there was a lot of concern from objectors about whether that amount reflects the actual scale of risk attached to this proposal. Questions were raised repeatedly about long-term liability, pollution incidents, enforcement, and who ultimately carries responsibility if something goes wrong years down the line, after the company has extracted every last gram of mineral wealth it could, and has long since fled the scene, leaving a trail of toxic environmental devastation behind them. One thing that became very clear in the early discussions was that Dalradian do not accept the likelihood of catastrophic failure. That position sat uneasily with many people in the room because objectors referenced multiple examples from around the world involving failures of mining waste facilities using similar technologies. There were references to acid mine drainage already known to exist at Curranalt, concerns around perpetual monitoring, and concerns that mine waste facilities require maintenance indefinitely. A lot of the discussion came back to future generations. Who monitors these sites 15 years from now, 100 years from now? Who pays? Who enforces it? What happens if ownership changes or a company no longer exists? The questions being asked by local people in the Sperrins were from their own lived experience, yet many of the responses remain tied to legal mechanisms and planning language that offers little or no comfort. Contributions from the farming community were incredibly powerful. The farmers spoke about their land, cattle, families, and fear what this development could mean for agriculture in the area and the knock-on effect on families. There was real frustration that no proper baseline agricultural study appears to have been carried out. People raised concerns about blasting, dust, ammonia, nitrates, water contamination, and the wider impact on farming beyond the footprint of the site itself. One farmer spoke about living beside the proposed mine for over 70 years and worrying now about the future for his sons and grandchildren. There were also testimonies shared from people who live beside mining operations elsewhere in the world. These contributions changed the atmosphere in the room. Stories from Peru, Guatemala, Honduras and Limerick described cattle dying, health deteriorating, contamination fears, and communities gradually changing over time. Pat and Nuala Gagan's testimony from County Limerick stayed with a lot of people. Their account of illness, miscarriages, sick animals, and eventually leaving their home and farm because of the impact industrial waste had on their lives was difficult to listen to. Tourism became another major issue during the week. Dalradian maintained throughout that they do not believe there will be significant tourism impact arising from the proposal. This position was strongly challenged by local tourism providers, anglers, residents, community representatives, who spoke about the Sperrins as a place people come to because of its peace, beauty, rivers, dark skies, and rolling landscape. A number of people spoke emotionally about the fear of industrialisation in an area of outstanding natural beauty. The proposed haul roads, power lines, waste facility, lighting, noise and dust all featured heavily in those discussions. There was also frustration around the lack of meaningful engagement with tourism operators by the applicant and the absence of any detailed research into how people might perceive the area if a large gold mine goes ahead. One local person described the idea of a haul road cutting through an area where walking, cycling and tourism are actively being promoted. Another speaker talked about raising children in the Sperrins and wanting them to inherit somewhere safe and healthy, where they and their generations coming behind them will thrive long into the future. The angling contributions were also significant. The foil system and the Onkhaloo River were described as hugely important environmentally, culturally and economically. There were warnings about salmon decline already happening and concerns about introducing further environmental pressures into a vulnerable river system. And as the week moved into planning policy discussions, the atmosphere seemed increasingly tense. A lot of attention focused on whether existing planning policy is being interpreted consistently. FODC repeatedly argued that the local development plan is the key planning document and should carry significant weight. There was concern from objectors that some policies appear to be treated flexibly when they create difficulty for the applicant. For example, the discussions around waste policy were particularly striking. DFI stated that they do not believe the waste management policy applies. FODC challenged that strongly. And during the discussions, Dalradian acknowledged that the proposal does involve a waste facility for extractive waste, while continuing to argue that the waste management policy should not apply to it. At times, the exchanges became a little surreal. Comparisons were made to car parks and coffee grounds, while people in the room were thinking about millions of tonnes of potentially toxic mine waste. There was visible frustration from many of the local community during this part of the proceedings. The issue of neutrality for the department DFI also surfaced repeatedly during the week. There is a growing concern amongst local people about the role of the department and the reluctance to give direct answers on difficult issues. A phrase during the week was that the department's neutrality was becoming tiresome. I think what many people are struggling with is the sense that ordinary members of the public have spent years researching technical documents, mining failures, environmental risks, planning policy, while the departments themselves often appear cautious about taking firm positions. In my mind, it is a form of weaponised incompetence. That feeling deepened considerably during the waste policy discussions. There was a real sense of disbelief in the room that the department could continue to present itself as an honest broker, while also being the ultimate decision maker in the process. And as I said earlier, the timetable issue also continued right through the week. Dates shifted again and again, topics moved around, additional hearings appeared likely later in the year and possibly beyond. That uncertainty is becoming a major issue for people trying to participate. Many local people are using annual leave to attend. Some have childcare responsibilities, some are self-employed, Some are travelling long distance repeatedly. There were strong concerns raised about procedural fairness and meaningful public participation. And finally, the process itself has taken a toll. You can hear it in the voices of people who have been carrying this for years now. People are tired in a way that goes far beyond long days and late nights. There is a weariness that comes from trying to hold together ordinary life while constantly preparing to defend the place we call home. And so another week turns on this strange carousel of time. The people keep showing up, the stories keep being told, and round the process goes while a community tries not to lose itself in it. Anyways, that is the week that was at the public inquiry. Thank you to everyone who contributed, spoke, supported each other, brought food, helped with lifts, and continues to show up every day despite how exhausting this process has become. And a small request. This podcast has grown entirely through word of mouth, people sharing episodes and listeners coming back day after day to follow the public inquiry. If you found value in it, following the podcast on Spotify or leaving a review on Apple Podcasts genuinely makes a huge difference. It helps push these conversations out beyond our own circles and into places they might not otherwise reach. For something that started with just a microphone, a notebook, and lots of late nights trying to make sense of the day, the support has been extraordinary. Thank you, and we'll see you all again on Monday.